oh my God, it was a cult. I had no idea. I was in a polyamorous cult in Paris without realizing it because my French was so bad. I wasn't picking up on all the weird dynamics that were going on.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 141. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have an interview with Zach. It's a super fun, crazy story.
It is a little bit wild, and we will say that the timeline gets a little muddy,
Yeah.
but we do clear it up. So if you're lost, you will be found.
Yeah.
Also important to note that Zach was put in touch with us by Kat from episode 137, and he is the founder of the infamous Yale orgy team.
We do talk about that quite a bit.
So you're going to want to stick around. This is a wild adventure, and we're really thankful that Kat put us in touch with Zach and that Zach was willing to come on and share his story with us. So thank you to both of you.
Yes. Before we get into the show, we just have a couple of announcements, as we usually do. The first is our meet and greet. So last Saturday, we had our meet and greet, and it was amazing.
Our monthly meet and greet.
Yes, our monthly meet and greet.
So for the people who are like, oh, I missed it, I don't get to be a part of it, there's one next month.
Right. So we had over 30 people join this time. They're getting bigger and bigger.
We broke records.
Yeah.
We shattered the records.
Yeah. And all kinds of different people, huge age range, some singles, some couples.
It was diverse.
Yeah.
Let's just say it was diverse.
Yeah.
And fun.
And fun.
And we met some new people.
We did. Well, we always meet new people on those. So that's awesome.
So thank you to everybody who joined. We really, really appreciate it. If you're interested in joining one in the future, they are $10. And you can, we'll talk about how to get some discounts later, but you head over to normalizingnonmonogamy.com. That's our website.
In case you didn't figure that out.
And you click on the meet and greet tab, and all of the information is there, how to sign up and join. And we promise a fun time. Yeah,
our next one is scheduled for September 19th. That's a Saturday. And so go over to our website and check it out.
So if you want one of those discounts that we were just bragging about.
Yeah.
You could be one of the amazing, wonderful people who joins our Patreon, and you can get special discounts that basically offset the cost of Patreon for you. So there's really nothing to lose by doing that, and only things to gain, such as
our monthly Q&As, which our next one is actually tonight if you're listening to this on August 26th.
So go join right now.
You can join and come join our Q&A. We will have another one next month. So the Q&As, we do one at 9 p.m. Eastern and one at 9 p.m. Pacific, and they're just a more informal discussion. Great time. We also have a women's group, and the next meeting has not been announced yet, but it will be in middle of September. And
we just broke 100,000. Oh, I'm sorry, just 100. 100 patrons. So
100 patrons. That's amazing. We're so excited.
Yeah. So we just, again, wanted to say a huge, gigantic thank you to everyone who helps make the community amazing. You know, we talk about the Q&As. It's really more of just a wonderful discussion and way to build community with people.
Oh, and I forgot, you also get to join the MeWe group, which is just a chat group.
Yeah. So check it out. We would love to have you be a part of it. And again, thank you to everybody who has already joined and is supporting the show and helping build the incredible community with us. So
yes.
Thank you for that. Head over to our website,
normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
Click on the community tab or the brand new Patreon tab. And
just to make it a little more obvious.
And it's pretty easy what to do from there. Then one final thing.
From our sponsor.
Yeah, a huge thank you to our sponsor, Alt Playground. If you're not familiar with Alt Playground yet, they are an online dating community, perhaps the greatest, most diverse, modern online dating website for non-monogamous people on the whole internet.
Good description.
Yeah, I came up with it myself. Thanks. I should be a marketing guru.
They do bring in a lot of diversity, and part of that is that Swinger Safari is now part of Alt Playground. So they're bringing on other platforms to try to make an even bigger and diverse platform.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, they brought on, was it Swingin' Mofos?
Yeah, something like that. Another one.
And they've acquired a handful, and we don't know this for sure, but we're going to throw out random speculations that there's probably others in the works. Seriously, have no idea. We could have made that up. But the point is they are trying to create the most diverse and, again, modern and vast array of non-monogamous people looking to meet other sexy non-monogamous people on the internet.
If you want to check them out, you can go to their website, altplayground.net, or follow the links on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
And with that, we will say...
We should see how fast we can say that.
Well, you did a pretty good job. With that, we will say thank you for listening to us, and we hope you enjoy this episode with Zach.
Let's go.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show, Zach. We're excited to chat. You got referred to us. We got referred to you. I don't know which order makes sense, but by previous guest Kat from just a few weeks back.
Yeah, links to her episode will be in the show notes.
Yeah, and you are the captain and co-founder or founder of the orgy team, and we're going to circle back to that question later on. But welcome to the show. We're happy to have you. Do you mind introducing yourself for the listeners?
Yeah. My name is Zach. I am a 30-year-old practicing polyamory, I guess, as long as I've practiced relationships. And and I'm excited to be there. Right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we're excited to have you. Well, I guess take us back to the beginning. It sounds like it's been, like you said, since inception of relationships. How did you come to learn about non-monogamy? I guess, personally growing up, it wasn't a model that I knew existed necessarily.
Me either.
And so, not that we didn't discover it early, but it wasn't from the outset. So I guess, how did that come to be for you?
Yeah. So I guess the more I reflect on like who I was growing up, the more like it feels inevitable that I would end up being polyamorous. It was just like, it was my destiny just because of the person who I always was and the world I grew up in. But, I've always wanted to do things different. Anytime in art class, a teacher would show us how to build something. And I'm like, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it totally differently. And inevitably it was a disaster, but I learned a lot from it. And I've kind of taken that sort of like model of thinking to just about every aspect of my life. Relationships, no exceptions. So like, I never like, there's the prescribed way to go about relationships. And I always like, no, I'm going to rethink it and do it my own way. And, so that was kind of the precursor. And, but I think back about like the actual practice of non-monogamy. And, 6 years before I ever even learned the term polyamorous, I was a teenager in high school. I had fallen very much in love with someone who didn't want anything to do with me. And with the passion that only a teenager experiencing these emotions for the first time in his life can have. And
that tends to happen in high school.
Yeah. Good times. Love it. So yeah, I remember after months of just being tortured by this unrequited love and all the Rome, like building it up as this huge thing in my head. It occurred to me that what am I experiencing love and what is it doing making me miserable and what the fuck? I grew up in this very sort of hippie West Coast family where the only deity like I really grew up hearing about was love. Like love was the cosmic force of the universe. Love is what it was all about, man. Like it was, and so this thing that like, what is our purpose in life? It's to love. What is it always came down to that. And so here I was certain I was experiencing love going, why is this making me miserable if this is what it's all about? And it occurred to me that, there's this societally prescribed checklist that you need to, check. Like if you love someone, you have to be with them. They have to love you back. You have to have a functional relationship, all these things that you need to check if you love someone, and then it's great. And if you don't check the boxes, you're miserable. And I didn't want to be a part of that. I wanted to experience love and love and enjoy it and relish it to its full potential without any of that. And so I guess in that moment, I decided I would start practicing loving unconditionally. And I remember just sort of, yes, I am going to bask in this emotion I have for this woman. And whether or not she wants anything to do with me, that's okay. That doesn't matter. I am going to enjoy this feeling because this is the universe's gift to me.
Yeah. Well, and first of all, did she come around or did it not change her mind at all?
Oh, I think by the time, she came around to having an interaction with me and we were friends, but it never, nothing ever happened between us, but that's all right.
Yeah.
The lesson was learned.
Well, and then did you put it into practice, the unconditional love, and maybe having, whether they were multiple loves or multiple partners throughout high school? Or I guess, how did it look in a real, physical sense?
So, I was not having really many relationships in high school. I just did, I think only my senior year did I actually, get a girlfriend. And it was after that senior year did I finally first have what I felt like I was in a loving relationship. And, so I was late to the game as far, but that I had never really had any non-monogamy modeled for me at this point in my life. But I just remember going, wow, this having this loving interaction, this sexual interaction, all these aspects of it is such a powerful learning experience to connect with someone to this much. And every time you get to experience this, especially at this, young age that we were in, it's such a, boost to the life experience points. That I wanted that for myself and I wanted that for my partner. So I expressed to her that I want you to experience as much as you possibly can. And I don't, the idea of being possessive never really made sense to me. I ended up being faithful in that because my partners wanted to be monogamous, but I never once asked monogamy of my partners because that just was entirely counter of my worldview at that time.
So you played by the rules, so to speak, but they weren't necessarily your rules.
Yeah. And
it really wasn't the model that you were going after, but the people you fell into relationship with, that's what they were looking for.
Yeah. And I was that, then for me, playing by the rules of my partner was a form of love that I was happy to participate in. And so it wasn't until my senior year of college, I have all these health complications. I have to drop out of school. And then as I'm still out of school and as I'm starting to feel better, I cash in my Jew card and take a birthright trip to Israel and ended up then staying and did the birth left, backpacked through the Middle East for a while. Then I backpacked through Europe, met a woman in Sweden. She said, let's go to Paris together. We have this Parisian romance. Straight out of the romance novels. And 2 weeks into it, we were talking about what would it be like if we stayed in a long-term partnership? What if we went for this? What if we made it work? What if I never went back to America? And she's like, well, I have to admit something. Prior to meeting you, I identified as lesbian. I want women in my life. And that's an aspect of my identity I don't want to give up. Would you be interested in a polyamorous relationship? And was well, I've never heard this word, but my knowledge of root words suggests that this is exactly what I want. And so that's when I first I was 23, first heard the word polyamory uttered, and got ethical slut soon after, and that's the path.
So you gotta tell us, how did that relationship pan out? The love affair in Europe.
Well, I ended up having to go back to the U.S. eventually, but we kept in close contact. She, for environmental ethical reasons, doesn't fly. So the idea of and then cruise ships are even worse. So coming to visit me in the U.S. meant riding a cargo ship. And so, we still keep in contact every now and then, but she's kind of off the grid. So, but we're still very near and dear to each other's hearts.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's wonderful. Often. I was just curious.
So you come back to the U.S. You still haven't, not that you weren't, polyamory or non-monogamy was really, like you said, kind of a mindset, but you still haven't road tested the theory yet.
Yeah.
So what happens after you get back? You now know polyamory exists. You've read The Ethical Slut. Where does this take you?
Well, and at that point, I'm back in the United States. I'm trying to get back. I'm going back to finish my senior year. I get in the dance scene. I'm dancing a lot. In dancing, in blues dancing, it's a close embrace dance. If you've ever done it, you get very close with someone and you immediately test out that connection. And I remember dancing with this one woman, and instantly that connection was so powerful. I knew I was going to fall in love with her. It was clear to me at that moment. Yeah. And she had also just had a very similar experience where she had a whirlwind affair with someone who introduced her to this word polyamory. And so we both, it was very natural that we went on to it together. It was a beautiful, dramatic relationship. She was a poet and had a lot of feelings, and I was also a very, chaotic human at the time. And it was a lot of lessons were learned the hard way, but it was quite the experience.
So that was the first official relationship that you were in, where you were open and polyamorous actively in that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, that relationship continued in some form until I moved to Paris. When I spent a year in Paris after college, where I, got involved into a poly pod there through, OKCupid. It's a great, best way to travel. You go somewhere, you meet one polyamorous person, and they introduce you to all their polyamorous friends. And then suddenly you have a full network of people in a foreign country who share your ethics and worldview. And
so it's like couch surfing, but with an extra level of intimacy, maybe.
No, actually, absolutely. That's how, both indirectly and directly got most of my places to stay for free, just by sleeping my way across Europe.
That's amazing.
I don't know if that counts as sex work or not, but we'll say it's fine. I'm going to give it the green light. So I guess, can you back up a little bit? So you met this dance partner and you jumped into your first non-monogamous relationship, and you said you learned a ton. There was a lot of experiences there. Do you mind taking us through maybe a little bit deeper into that, like what that looked like? And did you two actually, besides saying, well, we're polyamorous, did you actually test it and see what that would look like, and what did it look like?
Yeah. She was a very beautiful person and very sociable. And so I remember telling her that she couldn't make me jealous. I've never once felt possessive. I've never felt jealousy in a relationship context. And whether she meant to or not, she kind of took that as a challenge. But at the same time, I was also in my senior year of college. And so we both had a lot of shenanigans on our own. Some worked out great, where we both felt like, yeah, we communicated super well. That was awesome. Go us. Some were absolutely explosive and created dramatic fights. But Yeah, no, we hit the ground running on testing the polyamory, probably with way more cavalier than I would ever recommend people new to polyamory would take.
Was it mostly like casual encounters with other people, or were there other like relationships that you were both forming? And not that a casual encounter isn't some form of a relationship, but were there deeper connections that you were both exploring?
Yeah, so there's two that come to mind, both because of the intensity and because of the ensuing drama. Who doesn't love that? So on her part, before I left for the summer, I introduced her to a really close friend of mine, and I knew he was exactly her type. Tall, handsome, had an accent, and he kind of looked like James Franco. And so they started sleeping together. And when she came to visit me in Europe at the time, while she was this was in New Haven. I went to school in New Haven. That's where Yale is located, and they're known for their pizza. So she was going to bring me my favorite pizza to Germany, where I was. And while she is waiting to pick up the pizza, he's with her, and in that moment, he proposes to her, like, "Don't go to Germany to be with this guy. Stay here and marry me." And so, that was one aspect of, drama.
When you didn't get your pizza, right?
I did get a pizza. I got the pizza. It was delivered to me in Germany. It was amazing. Yeah. She didn't marry him.
Okay.
He and I had a conversation about it. Never quite was the same after that, unfortunately.
And it's interesting though, right? Because I guess with the free love, the open love, that wasn't necessarily out of bounds as a move, or did that cross some type of rule that was in place?
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember when I heard about it, I wasn't like mad per se. If anything, I felt I was impressed with him. Like, damn, that takes some gumption. Like, cool, man. Like, go you, power to you. But at the same time, like, if it was in a, sort of a open-hearted polyamorous sort of way, like, it would have been all good. But that he was not a lesson I learned early on was the perils of your partner dating someone who's monogamous, especially if you're close friends with that person. And because inevitably they won't end up wanting a monogamous relationship. Your partner says, "No, I'm already dating your best friend." And in alienation ensues. That happened twice in a very short succession with me.
Oh boy!
And both of those friendships never quite were the same after that.
Wow, no, thank you for sharing. I mean, that's obviously tough, right? You guys are sort of primary partners, or you're long-term partners, and then somebody proposes. I could see that would catch you off guard. And regardless of your ability to love freely, that would be a tough one to swallow, I think.
Yeah. I mean, because essentially what he's asking her is to leave and become monogamous, which, it's still, that's still something that she can choose. And if she chose that, I would have been sad, but said, power to y'all. But she didn't take that path. She stayed with me, and if he and I could have talked about it and stayed friends, it would have been all okay. But expecting that kind of level of emotional intelligence for people in their early 20s, new to all this world, is a lot. I definitely didn't possess it.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so you're off in Europe. You're still you're polyamorous. You're exploring this. You're
meeting people on OKCupid.
Yeah, you're OKCupid surfing your way across Europe, and sounds like having a great time. I guess, where does the story kind of go from there, or how do things evolve?
Yeah. So back to that first guy who I introduced her to, the very first time she has a sexual encounter with him, I was present for it. It was a foursome. The other woman involved with that would go on to become a partner, someone I dated, a partner of mine. In fact, someone who's still very close in my life. And so that, I feel like the developing of that relationship kind of was the catalyst to end my first polyamorous relationship. I think there was too much jealousy. There was me falling in love with someone else was not something that was okay with her. Mm-hmm. I remember her saying, right around the time we break up, that was one of her rules, that I wasn't allowed to fall in love with other people. And I remember going, that was never once discussed. I never knew that was a rule. I would have never agreed to that. And it's a very dramatic story, and I was probably great for radio, but I feel like that was
no. It's for their privacy, and that's totally fine. I think I was curious. You did say that she took the "you'll never be able to make me jealous" as a challenge,
and then there was a lot of jealousy.
Did she succeed?
Oh yeah. She made me jealous. She also made me angry, which I had never felt anger in a relationship before. So that was kind of fun for me. What is this new emotion? I feel so much energy. I feel powerful, but also it's scary because I might say something hurtful. I channeled it well. When I was really angry, I would channel that energy into going and doing something nice for her. And I'm going to go to the store and buy her some chocolate just because I need to do something with this energy.
Well, that's a really interesting and amazing way to handle anger.
Don't get any ideas.
I know. I'm when you get really angry, go and do something nice for the person that you're angry at. That's incredible. And takes a lot of personal reflection and personal push, maybe, to work past that, the negative, if there's, or negative feelings of whatever that made you angry, to turn it into a positive thing. Yeah.
I was reading Way of the Peaceful Warrior at that time. And his sense, when the main character is really that's angry, and the sensei tells him, if you feel this energy, this is power. Do something good with it. And so that was kind of my approach to anger.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's good advice. I mean, I can't argue with that for sure. So back to Europe. You're traveling Europe. You sounds like ended the relationship with the first.
So it's a little more complicated. Europe, I ended up getting into all sorts of trouble after running of the bulls goes bad. End up spending a couple of days in solitary confinement, accused of murder. It's a dramatic story. Maybe time for another podcast, but
if we have time at the end, we'll circle back or another time.
it was kind of Amanda Knox light, but that goes back. I ended up going back to Yale to finish my final semester because it had been so disrupted. I still had one more semester left to do that. And during that time got very involved with the second partner, my second polyamorous partner, the first partner that actually made it polyamorous. I am in love with two people at once while my first partner is studying abroad in Europe, or doing a master's degree in Europe. And so I think the combination of all the wild factors involved in the distance and the me loving other people and her being in a place that's cold and depressing, just kind of it bubbled over and it ended.
So now you move forward with the second relationship. And that's like your second official, if there is such a thing, a polyamorous relationship.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. So the story continues. So what ended up breaking up the first relationship was the straw that broke the final crack was me violating fluid monogamy with her. That it was a boundary that we put up at the very beginning, but we hadn't talked about in a year. And it was sort of an out of sight, out of mind sort of I feel boundary for me. Obviously in retrospect, it's very clear cut. I mean, this is an issue with polyamory very often, but in my crazy college kid head, it just sort of never really entered it. And so I think in this sort of like, oh, by the way, you're probably not cool with it, but I want to tell you all this has happened. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. We broke up. I was in Cambodia at the time. But I flew across the world to do this grand romantic gesture to get back with her and it was amazing. I created this, scavenger hunt, and it was this very beautiful.
And this was for the first woman, right?
This is for the first woman.
Yeah.
And we had this most magical day. And she was like, and like head over heels, said it was the best day of her life. But also this other woman is a deal breaker for me. And so I had to, and so she said, if you want to do this, you have to not only cut this woman out of your life, tell her all the ways she harmed me and actually be safe and say these things that I will tell you to say that were pretty mean. And I did it. And something I still regret. I think this is what sort of was a turning point for me on the idea of hierarchical polyamory and relationship anarchy. Having one person say for our relationship to work, you have to treat someone poorly. You have to, end your relationship with this other person. Just sort of went against everything I valued. Without prior to having language for it. Now I am full of, poly jargon and theory as to why, but at that time it's just all very intuitive. Yeah.
So you ended up breaking it off with the second woman that had become very close to you.
Hurt her very badly.
Right.
Yeah.
And you went back with the first woman.
Not particularly. It was never
so then you weren't with either of them.
Yeah. So yeah, then I wasn't with either of them. I just sort of like, well, I gave it my all. Time to walk away. And that's when I moved to Paris and got involved in the Parisian polypod. That actually turned out to be a cult. That was wild.
Whoa. Okay. We'll have to circle back to that maybe.
Well, just right now. So hold on. What happened with
what's the Parisian polypod or polypod you said?
Yeah.
Polycult.
It was, I met a woman on OKCupid, 99% match. And she was like telling me all about her various partners and the things they go, and invited me over for apéro, which is sort of the French happy hour. They're very into the social apéros at someone's house. It's kind of a potluck happy hour. And so, yeah, and I met all these French polyamorous people while I was, and then they're having Game of Thrones night they invited me to. And then they're saying, yeah, we have these horizontal parties as well, which is their code word for play parties. But they don't want to, or their code word for sex parties, but they don't want people to feel pressure to have sex. So they call them horizontal parties. And I was like, well, what if I want to be
That's
vertical?
Creative.
Come on.
Yeah, all my sex is vertical these days. So.
So I got very much involved with them. Watched the entire season of Game of Thrones with them. Went to these they even threw me a horizontal going away party. And it was great. But at that point, my French was really poor. And they were all fluent in English. So I would kind of like drink wine and eat cheese while they all talked. And occasionally somebody would come over and like, oh yeah, this is what we're talking about. Like, okay, cool. And so that was the dynamic. It was years later, I reconnected with someone I like had a whirlwind fling with right before I left Paris. I reconnected with her years later and she said, oh yeah, right after you left, like some of the organizing guys, got accused of rape and the police got involved, and then they realized it was a much bigger problem. And then the anti-cult task force got involved, and they really, and they treated it as a cult. And in retrospect, I was like, wait, they were buying all that land and setting up all these sort of like farming operations where they were all going to go live on it. Oh my God, it was a cult. I had no idea. I was in a polyamorous cult in Paris without realizing it because my French was so bad. I wasn't picking up on all the weird dynamics that were going on. And
wow. I was just curious, throughout that time, like through these parties, did you ever pick up on like consent issues or safety issues, or did everything seem like, again, knowing that your French was limited, did things seem to be going okay?
Yeah, from my perspective, they seem really. I mean, like part of their shtick was that they were, very gung ho about the ethics and the philosophy. I feel what I discovered while living there is, despite the outdated historical reputation, that French are actually very French society is very conservative, socially. And so to be polyamorous is a big deal. And I guess to a degree it is, depending on your community in the US, it's the case here. But, even in Paris, it was a big deal. And so to defend themselves from all the naysayers, they got deep into theory. And so most of what being polyamorous in Paris meant was, debating polyamorous theory in poly cafes. And so, anyways, they were very gung ho on the ethics and the consent and stuff like that, as far as what was visible to me.
Right.
All the pernicious stuff was under the surface.
Well, and like you said, maybe you would have picked up on it more if your French was better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And you know what? Everyone seemed weird there to me because it was a completely different culture that I was like, is it, is this weird or is it just French? I just assumed everything. Oh, I guess just whatever. It's a French thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So really quick, just to maybe recap a very brief synopsis, because there's a lot of going overseas that I think.
Yeah. You've traveled a lot.
So it was, you went to Yale. Partway through Yale, you left and you were in Germany and Europe doing some traveling around, exploring on OKCupid. The woman brought you pizza and then went back to the US. Somewhere along that way, you broke one of the main rules, fell in love with somebody else and broke a rule. Somewhere in there, you wound up in Spain in a prison. Then you wound up in Cambodia. Then you went back to the U.S. to try and win over the first woman. Wound up breaking up with both women. Then you went to Paris to live. Wound up in a cult. And then as you left the cult, they threw you one last going away party, and you went back to finish your last semester of Yale. Did I do it?
It was a tough challenge. You didn't quite get the timeline, but you got all the key features.
Okay.
All the key features, maybe a little bit different order.
Yeah.
All right.
Dropped out of college, did the Middle East and Europe trip, had the whirlwind romance with the woman who introduced me to polyamory, went back to college to start my senior year, started my first polyamorous relationship.
Yeah. Okay, I remember now. Damn it. Okay, keep going. I'm sorry.
Went to Europe for the summer, where I got in all the trouble with the Spanish law, and had pizza delivered to me, and it was a great summer. Then went back to finish my last semester. That's when I was in the relationship with the second person, fell in love with her, broke rules. Then at the end of that year, I went to Asia with the first partner to her cousin's wedding. And where we traveled around, went to Thailand together. She went back to finish her master's program. I called her while we had the conversation while I was in Cambodia doing the Asia backpacking thing. And, and then I flew back to see her to do the grand romantic gesture.
And then to Paris.
Before that, he ended up breaking up with both women and then went to Paris.
And then to Paris. Okay. I forgot the Middle East trip, and that's my bad. So thank you for putting all the pieces, Humpty Dumpty's pieces back together.
So how about after Paris? Can you walk us through up Paris till now? Where are you now?
Oh, I've been in New Orleans. So while in Paris, one thing that kept happening was all these Parisian, this is 2016, would come up to me and was like, so explain this Trump guy to me. I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. He's not going to be president. And then as the year went on, they're like, if the one thing the French know, it's always count on America to make the worst decision. And they're like, I don't know. Well, we think he's going to be elected. Or we think he's going to be the next president. I'm like, he's not going to be president. And eventually I was like, screw it, I'm going back. And I joined Hillary Clinton's campaign. And I campaigned with her until the election. And after that, what do you do when you're feeling bad and have nothing to do? You go to New Orleans. So I went to visit my sister while she was living there at the time. She's this badass civil rights attorney doing awesome work. And then I've been living there ever since.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So one thing that we did glaze over was, you finished your degree at Yale? Mm-hmm. And somewhere in there, you founded either an orgy team or an orgy club.
Yeah, we're circling back to this.
Oh, yeah. So we want to get the scoop on the orgy organization. Organization.
The organization.
Yeah.
So I love that it was introduced as the Yale orgy team, which implies competitive intercollegiate orgies, which is such a great thought. I love that. So no, it was an extracurricular club. I guess depending on what you're studying, might be curricular. But so I remember my junior year of college, just realizing I wanted. Everyone at Yale was just hyper ambitious, hyper focused on these achieving society's definition of success, which we felt so arbitrarily given to us based on, whatever factors. And I really just had this sense that I just wanted to shake the dust a little bit, sort of open people's mind out to being just open people's hearts, open people's minds to just sort of not to look at their life as much bigger than that rat race. I remember not even having an articulation for it at the time, but just, it was a very powerful desire I had. And one thing that is of long-standing proud tradition of Yale is their naked parties. They throw naked parties wherever. And I remember midway through my junior year, I finally got up the courage to go to a naked party. I finally said, I'm ready. I am going to do a naked party. And I went to my good friend who was an organizer, who I knew was an organizer of these naked parties. I said, I finally have the courage to go to a naked party. When's the next one happening? He's like, well, we don't have any naked parties scheduled soon, but me and a few friends are having an orgy tonight, and we're hoping to have a straight guy there. Want to join us? And I was like, I just finally worked up the courage to go to a naked party, and you're asking me to go to an orgy?
It happens to everybody.
I was already drunk at the time, and so I was like, sure. And I ended up having I remember just sort of walking into this dorm room that I was like, am I in the right space? And then I was like, well, I don't want to go in yet. I'm too nervous. I'm just going to go to the bathroom. And in the bathroom, there was 3 naked people there. And I was like, oh, this is surprising. They're like, oh, we're about to take a shower. Want to join us? I'm like, yes, I would love to. And they invited me into the shower. We all played with each other in the shower, and then they're like, come on into the main room. And there was 12 people in the room, all having a great time doing sexy things with one another. And it was just such a mind-blowingly magical experience. And there was like some insecurity of, am I like the 13th wheel? I don't know. And then the next day, the person who invited me said, everyone loved having you there. It was great. We can't wait to have you join us for next time. And it was just like, wow. It felt such a mind-changing, life-changing, magical experience for me. And apparently it was a group of queer students that, like, from their freshman year, just all liked having parties together and having sex with one another. That was their thing. And then their senior year, they decided, like, maybe let's try and have some like new faces. And so I was like the first new face they invited. And
wow.
And then, so the next time they had it, like, I helped recruit new people to come and join. And then the next one, I like helped them organize. And then the last one, they were graduating the next day. And I was like, let me throw you a going away party, going away horizontal party. And that was the first one I ever hosted. And once he graduated, he says, Zach, this has been a magical part of my college experience. I hope it can be the magical part of a lot of people's experience, but it could only happen if you host them, because we're leaving. So that's the creation of Yale's Orgy Club.
So I have so many questions, but so was this a university sanctioned, like an actual official club?
At that time, no.
And at this time?
At this point, it's university funded. They have, pre-corona, of course, they had events with 100 some people. My successors have created the organization that I fantasized about having when I was a student. It's a beautiful experience. What is?
Holy crap. That's amazing.
No. So many questions. So back up. This was held these parties were held in a dorm?
Yeah. So the first ones, they're small, so you could have them in a common room of a dorm. So that could accommodate 20 people, very closely packed.
I just don't even.
I know. I think
I'm just thinking back to my university and how this would never ever happen. But did you wall off so nobody wandered into the orgy mistakenly, or the logistics of this are puzzling to me?
No, people wandered in and be like, "Oh, sorry," would leave.
That's amazing.
Or the roommates would be coming home from studying and be like, these idiots again. All right, I'm just going to my room.
So after everyone left and you had to take the baton, so you started hosting these events, and then that's how it kind of started growing into what it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I took it, I sort of refined the process, a repeatable process, industrialized it, if you want, I don't know, codified the processes. And I started hosting them off campus because, the dorms would not cut it for the size crowds that I was inviting. So find people, students who live in off campus housing that would had a big enough space and wouldn't mind me taking over their house for a party. And and I had people. I mostly did it. It was, in retrospect, I wish I brought more help on board, because I was doing it, so much of it by myself was a very stressful experience, and sharing the hosting responsibilities was something I should have done more on. But I definitely had some people help me out. And the woman who I said, my second polyamorous partner, after I graduated, she was the one who took up the torch and hosted it in my absence, and it has carried on. Now it's a full committee of people, doing really good work.
Wow. Okay, so
you still have so many questions.
I know we could do an entire episode about this, but I guess maybe my main one is how. It's maybe a two-parter. How do you keep yourself safe? So the safety piece of it. So keeping yourself sexually healthy and physically healthy, and then how did that play into keeping everybody who's going to these parties? Was there a big educational component to these events? Like, here's how you can, approach consent. Here's how you approach safety. Here's how to do all of these things. Or is it just like, here's a flyer, come to our orgy tonight, and we'll see you at 7:30.
Well, especially in a college environment, there's the consent, is just, there's a lot of room for potential violations there.
Yeah. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up. I have this was something we thought of often. So why did we do something like, why do we risk our reputation on campus to among highly ambitious people that, might be our senator one day? I don't know. To do this, it was, was it just because we were horny college kids? That was a big part of it. But really there was a political mission. There was this drive to, when my first experiences, it was a group of people that came together in the most loving, accepting, and communicative and respectful way to just make each other feel good. And that was a sort of joie de vivre, benevolence that I had never experienced before. And I wanted to bring that sort of way of thinking to campus. I honestly felt like orgies made me a better person, and learning to communicate in the way required for it was in an environment where so many people only learned about the concepts of consent their freshman year. Like, how do we radicalize consent to really teach it in a hands-on way? So everyone who came, I gave them my individual spiel. I demonstrated this is a good, respectful way of consent. I the use of barriers were always was expected, if not, was expected. We had lots. I remember I went to we had a student health office, and they're in charge of giving away the condoms. And so I remember walking in one day and going, so tonight I'm hosting an orgy. And they got so excited. They're like, oh, great, say no more. And they ran back and they got a bag, and a big old bag full of condoms and lubes and dental dams. And all right, be safe, have fun. And so educate. It was it was relatively unorganized and chaotic. And if you saw this as an adult going to play parties, you'd be like, this is too much chaos. But for, college kids, this was our organization. We had it had protocols. It had safety protocols. I was had somebody always in a fuzzy robe, monitoring, making sure people were all right. And we had plenty of protection distributed. And I was like, okay, we're, and demonstrating, creating examples of good consent and radical communication practices that most students never have exposure to.
Yeah. it's, again, we could talk about this for days, but we won't do that.
For the sake of time.
But it sounds like, again, largely obviously it created a safe enough environment that the school was willing to sanction it as an actual organization, and it has sustained, years later after leaving. So, I guess that's a testament to how you were able to organize and impact people.
Yeah. It wasn't entirely without incident, unsurprisingly. There were times where I had to ask people that were too drunk or too aggressive to leave. But in retrospect, I'm surprised there wasn't more.
Right.
Considering how chaotic. I think it was sort of, I kind of stumbled into it on accident, but it was, a radical experience for that kind of community, that kind of setting, that kind of university culture. I remember my friend who she never ended up coming, but I invited her often. It was a subject she was very interested in academically, and she wrote about receiving an invite on a personal essay that she when she was taking a class taught by Howard Dean. Former DNC chair and presidential candidate. So she was in a seminar and wrote about the personal essay, wrote about being invited to it. And in his feedback to her, he said, "Oh yeah, I love the part about the orgy invitation. I'm assuming that's fictional because, I went to Yale in the 70s and those weren't even happening then. So there's no way those things are happening now." So I was like, wow, Howard Dean, indirectly, lauded my wildness. Wow.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
All right.
Well, we could talk, like Finn said, we could talk about this for hours, but for the sake of time,
I was just going to say that going to a school that was 70+% men, I don't think the orgy club would have worked out so well.
It would have looked different.
It would have been a lot of guys standing around going, "Yep."
Sometimes we had that, every night was different. But what I found was amazing in that environment is when the one event I actually had where it was mostly guys, all these guys that are otherwise entirely straight were like, "Well, we're here, let's do it," and started hooking up with one another. And I was like, wow, this is so cool.
That's amazing. That's what I was going to say. Is you don't know until you're in that sex positive environment who may be kind of curious underneath that veil of I must be straight type thing, right? So if they're put in that environment with a bunch of other same sex people and you're horny and excited, and curious, well, other things can happen. And so that's cool that they felt safe enough that, okay, well, let's try this. Just because I do it once doesn't mean I have to do it again. Or maybe I am actually bi or gay.
Yeah, no, I love that about it because being that everything was it was a whole new context. So everything else doesn't apply anymore. All your previously sexual identity, all the other things, all the other holds no longer apply. So in this new setting where everything is so accepting and okay, and everything is so sexually charged. So many people really got to experiment a whole lot. I remember seeing a guy talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, "Yeah, on the Kinsey scale, I'm like a -1." And half hour later, I saw him going down on a woman. I was like, oh, wow.
Flip the switch.
I think a lot of people realized they were a lot more bi than they previously thought they were in those environments. And
no, that's amazing. So we'll get off the Yale Orgy Club a little bit. I was curious if you could talk about what your relationship structure, if you're okay, looks like right now.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So I've always sort of, since it's something I alluded to at the beginning, had this idea of like rethinking everything I do. And in relationships, that has proven such a valuable thing over and over again, to break down the social script, to think about everything that's been engendered and internalized, having grown up in a patriarchal society, and so my relationships, both there's the universal manifestation of my number one mission is to bring love into the world. The sort of the hippie deity that I grew up with. What is life but to bring love into the world? And so polyamory on one hand is that, but also to really sort of, it's such a great vessel for really breaking down and granulating what is it we've been programmed to think and feel, and how can we deconstruct it and think and feel in ways that are, and live in a way that best serves us. So decolonializing relationships, and it's been a constant practice of that. And so for me, that's why I use the term relationship anarchy, because that's what it to me, that's my relationship with the word. That's what it is. It's breaking down everything we've been taught and really sort of like from that foundation, creating really like unconditionally loving relationships that work for everyone involved. That's a very floral way to not answer your question.
No, you answered. You partially answered it. So do you, I guess in practice, do you have multiple partners at this moment?
Yeah. So most of my time in New Orleans, I've been with, I've sort of had a main primary partner, and from the hierarchical days to nowadays, the terms primary and secondary no longer are like prescriptive, and now like descriptive. Like you're my primary, therefore you have these privileges. No, it's like I call you my primary because we spend all our time together, and if I was moving cross country, you'd contemplate moving with me, sort of that kind of relationship. It was difficult in that we had sort of different ideas of what partnership looked like, just sort of on a day-to-day basis. So we took some space and have now sort of recreated a relationship that really works for us. You would, in a descriptive term, it would probably be more of a secondary relationship, but it's still very loving. We still spend a lot of time together. Our chemistry is amazing. This past Mardi Gras, had a class Mardi Gras fling that turned into a real life fling that turned into a COVID quarantine fling. And we are still together. We are road tripping across the country together. And it's just a really absolutely amazing relationship that I get to experience right now. And the woman I mentioned previously, who took on the torch of the organization, we're still very much in each other's lives. Our relationship path has taken every turn imaginable and has been so many different things. But one thing it's always been is just loving, and with the exception of, the hurtful things I was manipulated to say to her, it's always been kind. And we've always been there for each other. And so she's still someone I would consider a partner, someone I'm still madly in love with. And this last actually couple of weeks, we've had this sort of beautiful flowering in that we've all kind of converged. All four of us kind of converged in one location, being that everyone has free time on their hands because no one has a job anymore. So we spent the last month in the same city together, just living out all our polyamorous fantasies, and it's been an absolute magical experience.
We could keep talking for hours, but we want to be respectful of your time. And maybe, are there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't really covered? Is there anything major that we're missing that
I feel like we've touched, of the stuff that I was coming into this evening thinking I would talk about. I think we've touched the main one. Now that I live in New Orleans, actually, my New Orleans polyamorous life. So I feel like, the sex parties and polyamory, they've both developed totally independently one another. It feels ironic because nowadays they feel so intertwined in my life, but they came from completely different, circumstances, and probably both would have happened without the other. But and so my partner that I've been with in New Orleans, she. As I was living there and sort of like developing this community and finding all the weirdos and the sex positive people and the fun poly people, and building that network, she said it was always her fantasy to be in an orgy. So I was like, well, I used to throw these things back in my college days. Let me throw you one for your birthday. And so for her birthday, we had a sex party full of all our mutual friends that the vast majority of whom had never done a play party before. And it was just such it was kind of, they were friends from all sort of walks of life that all just had such a phenomenal, magical time. It was definitely a night to remember. Absolutely. And now that entire group of friends are now our sex party friends. And so we've all had such a good time. Like, this is the sex party community of New Orleans that I hang out with. And so I've continued hosting events throughout this time, and others have been hosting events. And it's, like most communities in New Orleans, it's relatively small, but like very outsizedly active, disproportionately active for.
And you're talking about like the last few years that you've lived there, correct?
Yeah. So that would be, yes, since the end of 2016.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking my time in New Orleans, it's been many things wonderful brought into my life. Owner of 2 pugs that I,
Awesome. That are probably super cute, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, again, we could talk for hours. You have a vast array of experiences that have been fascinating to listen to and hear and learn about. So thank you for sharing all of them. Is there any final thing that you wanted to throw out there for the listeners or share with people as we let you get on with your evening?
Yeah, I guess it's just the wrap up with gratitude. I have a lot of gratitude for not just the polyamorous experiences of my life, but also the polyamorous community that I've suddenly become very aware of over the last few years. And the two of you are doing an amazing job being a part of and adding to that community. And it's an awakening of people all over the world, sort of rethinking relationships and how we could love more unconditionally and fully, and break down all the negative things that we've been taught and create beauty and love into the world. And thank you for bringing love into the world, and thank you for helping others do the same.
Oh, no. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for doing the work you do, too, because it takes all of us to do our part.
Yeah, and if there's any Yale orgy alum out there that want to share their experiences.
Or other friends of yours.
Who knows? They might be all mad at me for narking out their organization. I hope not.
Well, if enrollment explodes at Yale this year, we'll know why.
The admissions department should get Yale a cut.
Yeah, we should. Yeah. I was going to say we should get an affiliate with Yale. 1% ought to be enough. We should be all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Zach, for everything. It was fantastic. And if you're listening, thank you, Kat, for hooking us up with Zach. We appreciate it and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a joy talking to you. And thank you, Kat. Kat is a wonderful human being. I'm glad that y'all got to talk to her as well.
Yeah, it was awesome. So thank you again and enjoy your night.
All right, you too. Good night.
And we're back. Just me this time?
Yeah, because you hurt my feelings.
Oh, jeez. No, I didn't.
While we were gone, I was scolded for just being myself.
No, that is so not true. You're lying.
Yeah. So what you didn't hear were things that I had to cut out of the intro.
Oh my gosh.
Because they were not acceptable.
All I said was that you use one phrase multiple times in a week, and that's...
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
No.
We're leaving this in here?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're sorry, listeners, that you have to hear that we fight.
You can't act like you're innocent, so...
So thank you to Zach for coming on the show. For real, thank you for coming on the show, sharing your story. And yeah, we're super excited to get it out there. And
can't thank you enough.
Yeah. With that, we do have to thank one other person.
Our sponsor.
Our sponsor, Alt Playground. Not really a person, an organization. So thank you to Alt Playground again for sponsoring this episode. If you're interested in helping them create the world's most diverse and modern online dating site, head over to normalizingnonmonogamy.com, use the links there, or go straight to their website, altplayground.net, and you'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, the other quick thing we wanted to just remind you of is that if you are looking to get tested for STDs, you can use the links on our website for stdcheck.com for $10 off your panel. And this is really nice because you can just go and get your blood taken and do your samples, and you don't have to actually explain to the doctor why you're getting tested.
Because there's no doctor there. You just go, you meet with the phlebotomist,
right?
Which is one of my favorite words.
You just wanted the choice or the chance to say that.
Yeah, well, you go to a national lab like Quest or LabCorp, and it takes about 5 minutes. You're in, you're out. They don't judge you. They don't care what you're there for. They just want to get your blood and your pee and get you the hell out. We love it. We use it. As soon as we start meeting people again, we will be getting our blood and pee taken
Jeez.
And tested.
We will. So
if you are already there, if you're comfortable to get out in the world and maybe you're in a part of the country where there's no COVID, go forth.
Or less COVID.
Go forth, get tested, and be safe. And if you want to help support the show and save $10 off of an already fairly cheap service, head over to our website again, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. There are links on the homepage, there are links on the resources page, or there are links in your podcast player below that should take you straight there.
Also, next week, we have a double header. Monday. So Monday, we have a special episode with Rebecca. And then Wednesday, we have a special episode with a polyquad. And Rebecca is part of that polyquad. So.
Not only a polyquad, they've all shacked up together.
Yes.
And then they added some others.
Yes.
And it's just nuts. So it's a wonderful conversation.
Amazing.
If you happen to still be listening at this moment, go ahead and reach out to us. Click on the Contact Us tab on our website and send us an email with the subject cupcakes to let us know you're one of the few who still listens, and maybe we'll solicit you to share your story, or we'll send you some swag or something. I don't know.
Just to say hi?
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But thank you for putting up with us.
And if you forgot, website is normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
And we'll stop dragging this out. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see you tonight at the meet and greet or at the Q&A.
You can't say specific day because who knows when they're listening to this.
Yeah, have a wonderful blank day. And we'll see you tonight at the meet and greet. God damn it. At the Q&A.
We're falling apart.
And we're just going to hit stop.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.